DStv.com.
702.
Live
On the Prime Media Plus app.
DStv channel 856
92.7
and 106 FM. Let's walk the talk.
Good morning, 7 minutes past 9. Welcome to the Clement Manyathela Show. Tshidi Madia, standing in for Clement. I'll be with you until 12 this afternoon.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
So, what is your take on those Youth Day messages yesterday? I kind of browsed a little bit over the TV in the afternoon to see who's saying what, where. We had Deputy President Paul Mashatile speaking on behalf of government, of course, because President Ramaphosa is in Canada at the G7 summit. I did watch former President Jacob Zuma sharing his thoughts on the Floyd Shivambu matter. He mentioned the issue without mentioning Floyd Shivambu's name. I felt a little bit vindicated, to be honest, because I did ask, for a parliament where? Parliament how? Take a listen to former President Jacob Zuma.
If you look seriously, you'll realize that if we have one of us, ophumeceleni asimnengi. Let me just tell you, abantu sebeke baba o Secretary General kule sebe u7 manje. Ngoba sidlali. Noma ngabe uzazi ukuthi umkhulu uyathandwa, uyikho konke, we don't care. We talk about our party. Laba bala kule party abathi mabebona umuntu engasebenzi sikhuluma lesazi ukuthi wenze njani noma eneyinkinga noma onile ebese sithi awusuke. Akekho umuntu odala ukuthi uyohlala esikhundleni kuyozangena ezulwini, ayikho lonto. Akuyona indaba yakho. If you don't know, ozubuza ukuthi kwenze njani. Kunabantu abaze bathi bafuna ukulokhuza ukuprotesta ngoba sithatha idecision kusho ukuthi ayikakheki le party le. Ayikakheki ngalendlela esifuna ngayo. Ngimtshela impela. Nani nivuma impela nize nixoxe indaba nibhale ngayo. Yini yona lo sifuna inkululeko la. Asivikeli umuntu. Sikhuluma nomonke umuntu la. Nalabe sathi kuqala bahambe azange sibaxoshe. Wayihambela ngoba kwakunezinto ezirong. Singafuni ukubaphoxa. Sitsheni sizwe ukuthi bonini. Ngoba iningi labo loneli kukhulu. Manje wayi bese ngena indaba eningayazi. Aniyona high command. High command okufanele ukuthi ikhulume indaba zalenhlangano. Owenza kahle nongenzi kahle, owenkinga nongenzi inkinga. Akuyona indaba yawenu le sengitshena abadala ke manje nothi ngani. Ngoba ibona ngizokuthiwa impela bazobe beprotesta. Kufanele ngabe sithola inkululeko silela inkululeko siyavikelana sodwa.
So those are the words of former President Jacob Zuma. And in essence, he literally is saying that Floyd got his just desserts, that they will not be questioned about their decisions, saying that nobody is born to lead. You're not born to lead until, I think, as in like until you pass. No one's born for it. He calls out those who are saying, hands off the Secretary General. You're not the high command. You don't make those decisions. And that people leave of their own volition. That when they try to show people where you've gone wrong, those people, if they're not willing to listen, that's not their doing. And it says that instead of fighting each other, they should be fighting for freedom. Remember, his whole mission in 2025 is to free South Africa. I'm not going to say from what. That's the former president's mission. What I thought was interesting is that Floyd Shivambu did not retweet anything from NKP yesterday. I think at an event a day or so before, that's what he had spoken about. He kind of pretended nothing happened. And then there's also this growing claim, these murmurs, that his trip to Malawi to fugitive Shepherd Bushiri was to secure a bag. People claiming 1.5. And I was like, how does that secure anything for a politician? When you look at their lifestyles, how does it secure anything in 2025? What are your thoughts about the speeches? You know, they also launched the youth wing, the MKP. I don't know if you saw that. But you know what also caught my attention had to also be the actions of EFF. So Julius Malema had on a Kimkhele in Zulu. He wore a Mkhele yesterday. Massive crowd, and he always gets those right. So he was there in Mkhele. He's really in my head trying to win back support in KZN. And I just, to be honest, can't see it. They did well in 2019, but they've been unable to repeat that performance. They've been unable to retain that support. In 2024, it bled, and they said it's because of the birth of the Umkhonto weSizwe party and other factors last year. And even though this year they talk about launching branches with 200 members in good standing, all you need to actually do is look at the by-election results where they'll have 2 votes here, 20 votes there. So that tells you that something's gone very wrong. They continue to perform quite dismally in KZN. And the part of me is like, why don't you just cut your losses and focus on areas where you can grow? I don't understand the fascination. And yes, you can make an argument that they fill up stadiums. Now, EFF consistently fills up stadiums, but it's always had a problem of translating those packed stadiums into actual votes. Perhaps this might change if with younger voters, because we are getting younger and younger people now being able to vote. So maybe a younger generation of voters might change its luck. And speaking of the EFF, before I move on, sad news coming out of the bulletins this morning. If you listen to Sfiso Zulu a little while there was an accident in KZN, I think in the Vryheid area. 12 political supporters who died in a bus crash in KZN, and I understand that those supporters are members of the EFF. It's incredibly heartbreaking when you see people who go, with all the joy and all their might to these rallies, and it becomes that. I thought about the bus crash in Bombela in January with the ANC. I thought about that other accident. They called them the Kuruleni 10. They'd gone to a manifesto launch when former President Jacob Zuma, funny enough, was leader of the ANC, and there was an accident there. What are your thoughts? What are your takeaways from the speeches yesterday? Do you even care? 011-883-0702, 072-702-1702. Coming to your calls on your WhatsApps now.
702
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
Tabo in Joburg, good morning to you. Welcome to Radio 702.
Yeah, good morning, Tshidi. I think just 2 thoughts. The first was around the speeches. That I wonder, I was listening to Deputy President Paul Mashatile yesterday deliver his, and I wondered how many South Africans listened to the speech and listened to it expecting anything to come out of it. How many South Africans listen to politicians speak and not just relate and resonate, but engage in such a way that they get direction to say, yes, absolutely, this is where I believe South Africans are, and this is where I believe South Africans are going. I think more often than not, I found that politicians speak above or over, rather, the general public's head. And people don't get these speeches. People don't expect anything from them. They're almost just like a formality. Like when you go to a function, you know that someone is going to say something. So you wait for that thing to be said and pass. And then, then we can just move on to the next item. So I did wonder about that, and I don't know, I'd be interested as well to hear maybe your thoughts and others around that view.
It's almost as if they're an autopilot. They're like, you're just ticking the box. Like, what can you say? Let's just do this thing and get out of the way.
Yes, because I don't think there's anything to expect out of the speech. Like you come, you say something to thousands of people that are listening. Most of it feels very impractical. Most of it feels like I don't see how we move then from what you are saying to how it happens, how it practically applies in my everyday life. And it might be a stretch, which is why I'm saying it's open to conversation.
Sure.
It's open to, and I think the next one after that is just seeing the visuals coming in yesterday. It seemed like Deputy President, Minister of Basic Education, and Minister of Arts and Culture had gathered around a school to open a tennis court. I could be wrong. Was that a sporting facility, or was it a tennis court?
But I get a tennis court is also a sporting facility. I didn't see that. That's an interesting one.
I would want to know more about it. But if it is a tennis court, was it worth presidential attention? Or is it just something that we're supposed to be doing for our schools?
Yeah.
You know?
That's a big question. Is it worth then the presidential attention? That much effort, money and resources and that high level of delegation.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Thabo, for that. That's food for thought there. That's Thabo out in Joburg. Thank you so much. Sandile in Kagiso, hi, good morning to you.
Good morning, Tshidi. How are you?
Very good. What's on your mind today?
Yes, firstly, I would like to say condolences to our members of the EFF who just passed on while they were on their way to Durban. So I'm sending their condolences to their family and the EFF at large and the whole of South Africa.
Absolutely.
Tshidi, yeah, you know, you guys always make this comparison that the EFF can fill up a stadium, but that doesn't equate to the votes. You are correct in one point in saying that, but the stadium is small. Let's talk logic now. The people who are in the stadium, they should not equate the people who are voting EFF because they are small. Even if they go to FNB for 90,000, that's 90,000. EFF is voted by millions. So this argument
just
of
1 million. Just 1 million, not millions. One.
It can be 1 million, but 90,000 compared to 1 million. You are correct when you say it doesn't equate that. So people always say, yes, EFF filled up the stadium, but that doesn't equate to votes. How do we calculate that? Because 90,000, EFF is voted by a million. Let's say a million. Or 200,000.
Okay. Can I come in? Can I come in on that quickly? You know, if you listen to the politicians of the EFF, they're actually quite clear about what it means for them. It's a psychological. We all understand that filling up stadiums is psychological warfare. And if you listen to them pay attention rather on social media, they kind of speak about how that's where you see what their might is. And they'll speak about it. Like if you go to vote and you're voting via Twitter, they'll tell you that they believe that they're in charge. So it speaks to their own language to say, we do, you're correct. And ceremology, unfortunately, Sindile, is part and parcel of the South African political narrative. They compare stadiums and use that to try and gauge what it means. I take your point that 90,000 can't equate to actually what it means in realistic terms. I take that point. But the party itself engages in those conversations. It rates itself based on that too. That's what happens in our political landscape.
I would say that is a political statement, but engaging on that is still incorrect. Even if they say that, it's still incorrect. You've got 90,000 and you've got 1 million votes. It doesn't equate. I'm still making the same
I don't take your point away from you. It doesn't also change that it's also a fact. Filling up stadiums doesn't translate to filling up on the ballot. I take the point. Thank you so much. That's Kagiso out. That's Sindile out in Kagiso. Thank you. I do take your point, but that's where I stand as well. 011-883-0702, 072-702-1702 for your voice notes and your WhatsApps. I want to play a few of your voice notes now.
Good morning, 702. Tshidi, I think Jacob Zuma doesn't really believe genuinely in democracy and the very dispensation that he claimed to have protected and fought for. He is only protecting himself. As the Zulu saying, kancane kancane uyafela. So when it comes to the best speeches, I'd say that one from the Good Party where it says implementation, not speeches. That Pretoria.
Good morning. It's very hilarious to hear what Zuma had to say about Shibambo. He says he is the 7th SG to be fired since the inception of the party. So we'll see what this political theater will pan out to be. It's very interesting. We'll watch. Anonymous. Bye.
All right, thank you so much for that. I'll go through some of the WhatsApps in just a little bit. I also want to get your thoughts, and I was saying a little bit earlier that the quagmire that is Iran and Israel is also fascinating for me. So news coming out of Canada today is that, and this is where the G7 summit is currently taking place. US President Donald Trump and his Secretary of State Marco Rubio have left the conference early. As I understand it, it's due to the escalating tensions in the Middle East. I want to get your thoughts on that Iran-Israel conflict. Last night, there were reports of an airstrike hitting the headquarters of Iran's state television in Tehran. I think 3 employees have died from that incident. There's lots of talk about de-escalation, and what does de-escalation actually look like at this point of time? And that conversation says de-escalation can't happen with these two parties, with these two countries themselves. I heard some saying it will be up to the US to navigate the moment. Israel continues to look to the United States for support. Trump has also been accused of many things in this latest clash. So yesterday I spoke to Dr. Oscar van Heerden, who says he believes that the U.S. was negotiating with Iran in bad faith all along. It was pretending as far as Iran is concerned. He says that Israel's actions are at the behest of the U.S. and that the greater issue really is about the fall of U.S. hegemony. He says that, thoughts that the G7's own perceive, there's a perception that there's a back and forth among the G7 countries. At some point, we heard that they wanted to put out a statement, but they really couldn't because the U.S. didn't want to co-sign on a statement calling for de-escalation. Again, Trump comes into the conversation, saying that all Iran needs to do is to negotiate, saying that they sat on 60 days and didn't negotiate and didn't come up with a deal. Remember, he also has his own tariff war that's playing itself out in the background, saying that 60 days have lapsed. You've got different people saying different things. South Africa has been invited there. I think Mexico is there. I think India is there. You also have the European Union there. You've got the United Nations. All of them pretty much calling for a de-escalation in essence. On our part, we've expressed serious concern. We've called for urgent de-escalation. We've reiterated, we've emphasized what the rules are, that under international humanitarian law, civilians and civilian infrastructure must never be considered as legitimate targets. Our president is actually there looking for trade deals himself. But of course, this becomes one of the big issues, the overarching issues at the G7, because we're also worried about peace and stability in that entire region. What is your reading of what's at play? There's so much back and forth about what's happening. Do you think it's just Benjamin Netanyahu acting of his own volition, of his own accord, or is the argument that Iran, because that's an argument they've made, that Iran has to be targeted because it's a backer of Hamas? Is that sufficient enough for what you're seeing? Your thoughts about even there's so many concerns around this and what it could be. Some people believe we're on our way towards World War III. What's your thoughts? 011-883-0702, 072-702-1702.
Hey, morning, Tshidi. Shumania. Tshidi, I hope Tata Ramaphosa doesn't even interfere or say anything about Iran and Israel. Hey, it is hot there. It's cooking. If Madala will just stay away from it, we've got peace. But if Madala start to put his what you call in there, we are in trouble.
Dumela Tshidi and team, Kingsley from Germiston. I think in as far as former President Jacob Zuma saying that they've had 7 SGs, that's an indication of poor leadership as far as I'm concerned, and it's not something that he should be saying out loud. Not to mention the fact that he's beating the old drum and trying to mobilize the youth to go and find the quote-unquote stolen votes. In as far as the Iran-Israel conflict that is going on, I think it is exposing the shenanigans of Donald Trump and his style of leadership, if you can even call it that. And sadly, we have a situation that exposes that international bodies have no teeth. How long has the Ukraine-Russia war been going on? The Gaza conflict. How long has that been going on? And international bodies have failed to put a stop to these proxy wars.
Morning, Tshidi. With regard to the Iran-Israel war, I think it's high time we take a closer look at the role of the UN. I don't think the UN is serving its purpose. It should be disbanded because every country can do as they please. And also international law. International law is international law, but it's not international law to the world superpowers. Also, the role of BRICS. What's going on with BRICS? The meetings they are holding, what are they discussing actually?
Thank you so much. Coming back to some of your WhatsApps, see, it's always hilarious to listen to former President Zuma because his memory is so selective. Was it not him who said the ANC will rule until Jesus comes back? Jiggy jiggy. Now people can't hold positions indefinitely. It's always about who's involved and the context behind it. Another one, Floyd Shivambu's current challenges are a sobering reminder that not all opportunities lead to greener pastures. Sometimes what we have is more valuable than we realize. Stay grounded, choose wisely, and never take your present stability for granted. Good morning. Who still listens to these messages? It's about Youth Day messages rather. Anyway, they're full of lies and empty promises. That's Tabiso from Rampatlele. Another one, good morning. Sending my sincere condolences to EFF for the passing of their members, wishing those in hospital a speedy recovery. That's WCLA from Midrand. WCLA, I absolutely share your sentiments. Condolences to those who've lost their loved ones and a speedy recovery to those who've been hospitalized from that accident in Vryheid. I'm pretty sure Sfiso has more of that now in the headlines. It is 9:30.
702
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
It's 9:35. Tshidi Madia standing in for Clement Manyathela. We are speaking about a variety of issues. I was asking about the Youth Day issues and what your sentiments are around the speeches. Do they matter? I'm asking about what you heard from a President Jacob Zuma and what sounds to me like a clear message to Floyd Shivambu. The EFF was also in KZN. Julius wearing umqhele, trying very hard to win over the hearts and minds of KZN supporters. They've lost support there at some point in the 2024 elections. And then we're also speaking, of course, about the Iran-Israel conflict. What do you make of it? Who do you think is behind what we are seeing now? I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu, who had a lot, the Prime Minister in an interview, spoke about believing that killing the supreme leader will help de-escalate, will help calm the situation. And that people are of a very different view about whether or not that's the right direction to go in. Donald Trump's actions have been quite interesting to also watch in all of this, kind of pretending he's removed from it. He's not. Well, this morning, he's now left the G7 summit in Canada early, so he's not participating in the second day of the summit. He's gone back home, and part of the reason is about the Middle East conflict. So we kind of have to wait and see how that picture unfolds. 011-883, that's to make calls and to share your thoughts. 072-702-1702 for voice notes and WhatsApps.
Morning, Tshidi. Lekai. Listen, this thing, the 16th of June, and the speeches. Firstly, Zuma, please, kikopa aye ko gae. I love this adikhomo. He's just an old man clinging to power and don't know what to do. Really, he's just kids. And the youth that follow him, I don't know what they have done in their heads. They've lost their minds. Condolences to the EFF members who have passed on. But I guess it's time that EFF and ANC just come together and they move on and become a force to reckon with. The youth of 1976 fought a good fight. Let the current youth understand that, lest they forget. Thank you.
Good morning, Tshidi. Yeah, it's very, very true. Filling up stadiums doesn't translate to, votes at all. I've been to various rallies, various political organization rallies, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to vote for them. I was there just to see the people that we basically see on TV live. So just to see them, and then that's all. That's all. And then when I go to vote, I vote for my own political organization. Thank you.
You know what that reminds me of? There was a young lady in last year's election cycle. What do they call her? Noma Rally. She went to every one of those rallies, and I actually liked that because you know what? You must go see what the parties are about. You must go hear the messaging. They called her Noma Rally last year. I saw her at the EFF, at the ANC, at the I think IFP, I think one of the parties that had a launch elsewhere, manifesto launch elsewhere, kind of flew in. I mean, she caught a lot of people's attention, but I thought that actually that is it. But that's what I was also trying to say about it doesn't translate to votes, is that people do go and listen to your messaging. You can fill up anything, but I also understand the argument that was being made earlier that actually 90,000 is absorbed, obviously, in a million. I take that. I absolutely take that. But I do think people don't go to stadiums because they're loyal to any party. Thank you so much. Hear more of your voice notes.
Good morning, Tshidi. Nothing left for Floyd Shibam in MK. Floyd must resign or go to join other party. That is nothing else.
What concerns me, Tshidi, about the decisions that Jacob Zuma does, it seems like he's very inconsistent when he applies the MK constitution. If you look at how he treats Floyd currently compared to how he treated his daughter Duduzile Zuma, you can see that there is totally inconsistency in all this. Because Duduzile Zuma, when she swore at Floyd, she was asked to just apologize, and Zuma is doing all this, including demoting Floyd at the wrong time when the elections are just around the corner. And this was Zuma's last chance to really redeem himself from his not so good past. And when he continues like this, he will die as a chess master who never mastered anything. Sadly so. Moses.
Good morning, Tshidi. Hey, now what I'm going to say now, I know that I'll be in trouble. But you see, listening to that clip of Jacob Zuma talking about, indirectly though, about Floyd, I hear a father who is angry. Very, 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 very much angry. He's very angry. So in other words, this is personal. It's no longer about politics. It's no longer about Floyd having gone to see Bushiri. It's no longer about that. It's other things now. Whatever Floyd did to Duduzile is huge. And here, a father is fuming. He's saying, how dare you do this to my daughter? That's what I can draw from that clip. Thank you, Tshidi. Kenny speaking.
Kenny, what did you do to my daughter? Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. That's an interesting perspective. I do think that he harbors a level of bitterness. I went to interview him last year. He definitely doesn't like President Cyril Ramaphosa. And I think maybe, because people have spoken about it as well, that part of the difficulty in Floyd Shivambu choosing to go to the MKP, that route, after everything he has said in the past about the former president, after everything they've done to the former president, that wasn't necessarily wise. In fact, somebody WhatsApped me now a tweet from the late Tito Mboweni that said, wait, I want to read it. I don't want to lie. I want to get it right. It says, he then says, Oya Queenie Wanamani. Where were you going? Where are you going? That's a question Tito Mboweni asked in August when Floyd Shivambu, the late Tito Mboweni asked in August when Floyd Shivambu made that move to the MKP. And I think it's one of those things where he must wrestle with that in his own head about the decision. I found it interesting when Moses said the former president will be the chess master who mastered nothing at all. I was like, yo, how brutal. Just some of your WhatsApps now. Just want to go through some of the WhatsApps that have come in. Papa Vu in Katoraz says, former President Zuma, he's never strategic. He should avoid pronouncing on such if he wants to build his party. Internal party matters should be kept within. Another one, Zuma's speech is dull and bitter. dull and bitter tongue lashing, Floyd, is a sign of anarchy and immaturity in Zuma. That's Stuart in Postmansberg. I'm looking at more Zuma WhatsApps on my radar. I'm going to leave it at that for now. Let me play some more of your voice notes.
Good morning, Tshidi. Israel can never fight Iran on its own. Never. Even all those wars Israel involved in, they will never fight on their own. They will always use United States. So this whole thing, which is happening now, there is no way Israelis are conducting that stuff on their own. They are backers behind them. They can't do it on their own. Never. They can't. So even United States negotiating with Iran that time, that was just it was in bad faith. In bad faith, I can say, because I think they were playing Iran all along. They were just giving them hope that they're gonna come up with a deal or something. While behind they were busy strategizing or planning to attack them. You see. Thanks. It's Aziz in Radio Corp.
Hi, Tshidi. On the Israel and Iran issue, I think that the United States of America had an idea, and it was a ruse. They were fooling Iran. I don't think America will ever forgive Iran for whatever history has, but we need to be careful of this dangerous man, Netanyahu. He's been wanting this war. He's been calling for this war for years and years, and finally it's here. I think the common denominator that is a problem in the Middle East is definitely Israel and not Iran, as they claim.
Hey, good morning, Tshidi, and the good team there. The issue of the Middle East. Israel has been manipulating the American politicians for a long time to push them into wars. If you look at the war in Afghanistan, Iraq, and everywhere, Syria, Netanyahu was at the forefront of pushing the Americans. Until the Americans stop supporting Israel, there will never be peace in that part of the world. Thank you, Tshidi.
Thank you so much. More of your WhatsApps here. Definitely America was negotiating in bad faith with Iran. De-escalation can be said, but the depth of the conflict within these two countries can have bad consequences for the Middle East. That's a concern many have. I also was very bothered with the attack on the broadcast, the Iranian broadcast. I was thinking about how many times media finds itself also in the crosshairs. I mean, think about what's happening in Gaza. Think about the amount of times we've heard of reporters also being targeted. In 1999, something that I've been thinking about, I think it was during the Kosovo War, NATO bombed a radio television, Serbia's headquarters. I think 16 people died. In 2003, the search for Saddam Hussein and mass weapons, remember that era, weapons of mass destruction, Tony Blair and Bush. In that era, you also had the Iraqi state television affected, went off air. Again, why? Because of a bomb. Those are also not spared. So seeing that live broadcast and seeing the shaking and hearing that, oh my God, we've been hit, is shocking. But unfortunately, not necessarily surprising. I see your call, Ibrahim. I'll come to you after this break.
No 2.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
10 minutes to 10. You listen to the Clement Manyathela Show, Tshidi Madia. Starting in for Clement, it is the open line. We're discussing a variety of issues, and I see a lot of people wanting to weigh in on this conflict that's unfolding between Israel and Iran. I think it's 5 days now in this back and forth that we've been seeing of airstrikes and missiles and the likes. Ibrahim in Joburg. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Tshidi. Thank you for a great show. Tshidi, my comment is, who gives any leader or any country the right to decide who should own nuclear weapons? And on what basis is that decision made? Donald Trump, Netanyahu, want to dictate to the world and say to the world that Iran should not be owning nuclear weapons when they have been the cause of wars throughout the world on false pretenses. How dare they do that?
Thank you.
And what gives them the right to do that?
So you're dealing with two hypocritical states from where you stand, where they also have the right to have these kind of tools and the kind of firepower, but nobody else can.
Exactly. Why can't Iran own a nuclear weapon when it is the United States who attacked Iraq on false pretenses?
All right, Ibrahim, thank you so much for that. A lot of what I'm seeing has me thinking about that Iraqi period, that weapons of mass destruction era, and how that was handled. Musheri in Pretoria West, hi.
Yes, Tshidi, how are you this morning?
Very good, thank you. What's on your mind?
Tshidi, the same question, the issue that Iran have nuclear weapons, and also Israel started firing missiles at Iran. Now G7 leaders saying that it's right for it to retaliate, whereas Israel is the one which started. What is normally the protocol if you're suspecting that someone might be having nuclear weapons? Is it to fire them? Or how does it go to if you're suspecting that one does have nuclear weapons?
There's also an interesting question that was being asked about what should Israel do next as far as the nuclear capabilities are concerned, that if it dares to move in that direction itself towards Iran, it'll isolate even more nations. Already some of these nations that have been in support of Israel are struggling to process this moment. They've been struggling around Israel's refusal to back down as far as Gaza is concerned. And now you've got yet another conflict and they're struggling to manage it. As I said, Trump is being accused of playing pretense a lot. And then you also have Benjamin Netanyahu telling you what he believes is best for Iranian people. And I'm not sure if they'll see eye to eye. I don't know. They think that what they're doing is in the best interest of Iranians. I don't know if Iranians would also agree with that point of view.
Yeah, but my question is for G7 also to support Israel for what they are doing, to say that Israel must retaliate. Whereas Israel is the one which started. Why do they support Israel instead of condemning both sides to say that you can't be? Because they're killing innocent people. Now G7, the body that one who thought that it will condemn what is happening, they're supporting Israel, of which Israel started is the first one to fire. Iran, of course, have to retaliate. But for G7 to say that Israel doesn't have the right to defend itself, it really is puzzling.
Yeah, thank you, Musheru. Musheru's out in Pretoria West. The G7, at some point was also stuck on a statement about de-escalation, because the US, from what we're seeing, did not want to de-escalate. I thought it was interesting looking at the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer's own approach, right? So confirming that they had built up forces, that they moved assets to the region for contingency if needs be, for contingency support if needs be. This, as in one hand, calls for a de-escalation of the conflict. And then if you listen to British broadcaster, they speak about how difficult this process is. They speak about what they call a delicate diplomacy that is required through the moment. They speak about how difficult it is for Starmer because he's not too close. So he's not powerful enough. He doesn't have that much influence in this from where they stand. And then they raised something interesting for me. They raised the issue of if there's instability, if people are displaced, where would they go? And then that's where their concern is, that the people will head in their direction. Think about Libya as well. What happened with people seeking refuge in European countries? And we saw how ugly that turned. So those are things that they are worried about in those moments as well. Saul in Johannesburg, hi.
Hi. My 10 cents worth is this. And just to quote what the Israeli foreign minister said on CNN 2 days ago, in essence, obviously they had intelligence, but let's not quote what intelligence they've got. The report from the International Atomic Energy Board stated clearly that Iran wasn't complying with enrichment and etc., etc. They weren't allowing inspectors in and so on and so forth. And according to intelligence, independent and otherwise, they're about 6 months away from reaching 90% enrichment. They're already at 60%, which actually means that they get nuclear weapons in their hands. Now, as the foreign minister says, when a country states clearly that they would like to wipe another country off the face of the earth, you don't go and question it. You don't go and say, well, maybe we've taken them out of context. You take action, just like they did in the 6-Day War, when all the Arab armies messed on their borders. They didn't ask to find out why are we messing on the Israeli borders. They knew why they were, because they were going to be attacked, and if and God forbid they would have been wiped out, there wouldn't be any Israel today. And that's exactly what the thing is. Now, whichever way you look at it, I'll quote what Churchill once said. He says there are certain individuals you cannot negotiate with.
But so, when you speak about intelligence, particularly that issue of intelligence, does Iraq not come to mind? Does weapons of mass destruction not come to mind? And how they found no weapons of mass destruction. They destabilized. They caused so much instability based off of intelligence that we still don't have. And remember, South Africa got involved and also sent investigators there and came back also with a report saying, actually, and so there's all of that as well, based on information at hand and the veracity of that information that you are basing all of this on. And I think that's why people are saying, actually, there's other issues at play.
Of course, there's other issues at play. It's the same Iran that financed Hamas and Hezbollah, that financed all the missiles into Israel constantly, where the world said absolutely nothing, where the 702 we never had this discussion, and it was a constant battle for Israel to defend itself against all.
So I do know that's not true. In terms of 702's discussions, I listen to my colleagues and I know that's okay. Fair enough. But I've run out of time. Okay. On that note, I know we're not worried and not scared to discuss those controversial topics. Thank you so much, Saul.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Keep well.
All right.
702.